Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the BCA-REDAS COVID Safe Restart webinar, working together towards COVID Safe and Restart Ready. My name is Kenwei from BCA Academy. We are very grateful to have the Real Estate Developers Association of Singapore, REDAS, joining us today to organize this live webinar. As construction activities gradually resume, we would like to welcome you to this platform and to engage the developers on the COVID-safe requirements prior to restart works to facilitate the restarting process as well as receive ground-up feedback on the safe restart process. We hope to share with you the key policy considerations and engage you on how we could best facilitate a safe restart for our sector while ensuring the safety of the greater community. As such, this platform is not intended to discuss questions regarding individual project status or allocated phase for restart. Instead, we encourage you to discuss the key areas where we could work together more closely across agencies and across the entire construction value chain. To facilitate a smoother restart for our sector, we thank you for your understanding. Before we start, here are some administrative matters to note. Please note that as participants, you're on mute settings. Should you have any questions about the discussion topics, you may do so by clicking the Q&A button on the screen to type in your queries. When we get to the Q&A session at the end of this webinar, we will also be activating the raise hand function to take live questions from the audience. Should you wish to ask a question verbally at the time, do click the raise hand icon. Do also note that when the session ends, you'll be directed to access an evaluation form after you have exited the webinar. Once submitted, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Today, we are pleased to have architect Tai Li Xiang, Executive Director, Build SG of BCA, to chair the session. Together with him, we have Mr. Chia Niang Hong, President of the Real Estate Developers Association of Singapore, REDAS, Engineer Chew Kiat Chuan, Group Director, Building Engineering, Commissioner of Building Control, BCA. Engineer Grace Mui, Center Director, IBUSG, Group Director, Manpower Strategy and Planning, BCA. And of course, we have Mr. Reginald Wee, Center Director, WeBuildSG of BCA. Without further ado, let us invite our webinar chairperson to deliver his welcome remarks. ED Tai, please.
A very good afternoon to each and every one of you. Before we even start this session, I've already started to receive questions. I can totally understand your eagerness to find out more answers. So we hope this session will provide that. And let me just also introduce some of the key areas we're going to touch on. So as you have heard the announcement about how construction will be allowed to resume in phases, but in a safe and controlled manner to minimize the risk of COVID-19 resurgence. I want to just underpin this whole discussion with these few keywords, safe and controlled manner. This has proven to be far more complex and challenging than we have all together with the industry ever experienced. And key to restart, successful restart or safe restart, there are three fundamental areas or safe measures that we're going to touch on. COVID-safe workforce, COVID-safe worker accommodation and transport, and lastly, COVID-safe worksite. Now, I just want to acknowledge that developers like yourselves have a critical role to ensure that the projects that you have, including contractors, can meet the restart criteria. While we try to exercise flexibility by allowing time for contractors to set out the safe management measures, we also work on other ways to support, like facilitating the setting up of CTQ, TOLQs, and there are several questions coming on that. Now, also we have worked with MINLAW on the issue of extension of time, which is not the end of the story. There will be more discussion, as well as the sharing of additional cost, particularly for existing contracts. So lastly, I want to thank REDAS, especially President Chia Niang Hong, for working so closely together with other TACs and BCA to provide feedback and likewise communicate information to your members. I also want to express my appreciation for REDAS, their generosity towards the migrant workers, as I had the opportunity to witness the presentation ceremony at the Migrants Workers Center, as REDAS are committed to contribute towards the welfare of migrant workers, and this is highly commendable. So before I hand back to the MC, I would like to just encourage you to continue to post your questions through the Q&A, so even as presentation starts, so that this allows me to collate the questions and put them into packages that our panelists can then address them. However, I will also take note of people who will use the raise hand button to post questions. So with that, let me hand you back to the MC to commence the presentation, and towards the end of it, I also invite President of REDAS, Mr. Chan Yen Hong, to address the audience as well. So let's begin with the presentation first. MC, over to you.
Thank you, ED Tai. Here's an overview of today's program. BCA colleagues will be sharing on the overall plan for a safe and controlled phased restart of the construction sector, which includes the phased approach and an overview of the respective COVID-safe criteria. First up, we have Mr. Louis Chong, Senior Manager, Strategic Planning and Transformation Office, BCA, who will be sharing on the overview of the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. Over to you, please, Louis.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Louis from BCA, and I'll be taking you through the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. So a quick recap, since 7 April when the circuit breaker period started, while most works were suspended, a small proportion of critical projects and essential services continued work with safe management measures in place. The outbreak caused disruption for many, and to help our firms tide over, various support measures were introduced since the Unity Budget will announce on 18 February to help businesses protect jobs and also preserve capacity and capability. With the circuit breaker lifted starting this week, restarting our economy will be done in a measured and progressive manner, with priority given to critical sectors and businesses that operate in settings with lower transmission risk. We have seen in some countries that a second wave can emerge, so we have to be cautious and put in place necessary safeguards. Particularly for our sectors, we should not rush to open up all activities from day one, as the majority of cases have been foreign workers and most of them from construction sector. So instead, our restart must be measured so that we can minimize the occurrence of large clusters. And this must be so because of the nature of our sector, with multiple subcontracting and suppliers layers leading to high transmission risk in activities due to close interlinkage and high mixing among workers. We know subcontractors typically work on multiple projects with teams of workers intermingling, and workers from various accommodation actively interact after working hours. So protocol and measures are required to control this risk. Starting from this week on 2nd June, works will resume gradually, adding another 5% of the workforce in the month of June. Importantly, all works must have safe management measures and will require approval before restarting. Workers must also be tested before they can start work. And so, works will resume in a phased manner, with the pace of resumption dependent on the readiness of firms to implement the safe restart criteria and how soon workers can be tested and cleared for work. Taking a phased approach will also allow us to pilot and refine the restart criteria and iron out any teething issues so that we can be confident to ramp up the later phases without risking further outbreaks. And COVID safety is critical to the successful restart of our sector. The restart will be approved by project, and companies involved must meet this restart criteria, these 3 rules, before they are allowed to resume construction works. The rules are premised on the principle of cohorting workers at project level and are important as the condition of work sites, accommodation, transportation, and workers' health status and behaviors are crucial towards mitigating any potential resurgence of infection in the workforce and the community. My colleagues will elaborate on these rules later on. As mentioned earlier, various support measures have been introduced to help firms tide over the COVID situation. One, to help offset manpower costs and to protect livelihood of residents. The JSS Job Support Scheme and Foreign Worker Levy Waiver and Rebate was introduced for the month of April and May. And next, to help with companies' cash flow and business sustainability, the government had allowed for TOL land rental waiver in April and May. Firm could also claim a one-off advance payment in April and May and make fortnightly progress claim for public sector projects. The COVID bill was also passed to remove liability for non-performance of contracts due to COVID-19 for 6 months. And lastly, for development project, PCP and ABSD remission dates were allowed for 6 months extension. Following, we have received industry feedback for additional support to tide through this period, and the government has set aside a substantial budget to help firms in the construction sector as we restart. First, as announced in DPM budget speech on 26 May, the Job Support Scheme and Foreign Worker Levy Waiver and Rebates will be extended to help firms with manpower costs. Second, to help ease firms' cash flow and ensure business sustainability, the public sector will provide support by co-sharing the prolongation of construction arising from the circuit breaker and phase restart, and the loss of productivity due to compliance with the restart criteria. These include operating expenses incurred, such as equipment when projects are halted. Thirdly, we recognize that the restart criteria, while necessary for a safe restart, will be an additional imposition. Hence, we will provide the following measure to defray compliance costs. First, as part of the safe accommodation requirement, the temporary bridging loan program will help to ease cash flow for building CTQs and TOLQs. Next, for regular swabbing of workers as part of safe workforce requirements, the cost will be borne by the government until August 2020. Beyond that, we will work out the arrangement on how the costs can be shared among parties. And lastly, as part of the safe worksite requirement to appoint safe management officer, we will be co-funding 50% of their salary for a 6-month window from September 2020. And importantly, we cannot go back to business as usual pre-COVID. As an industry, we will need all to come together to be able to deal with the COVID world and emerge stronger. Lastly, to adjust to the new operating environment, we are lining up a series of training programs and engagement to prepare everyone on the safe management measures and to keep industry informed on the policy consideration and requirement. We have stated the COVID safe training for workers last week on 25th May, and will be launching a series of further training for safe management officers and safe leaders. Other industry engagement programs will also be launched in the following months to help everyone as we restart. We seek your support to prepare our industry together for the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Next, we have Ms. Pang Mei Ting, Senior Manager, Manpower and Strategy Group, BCA, will be presenting the first COVID-safe criteria on the key areas, the roles and responsibilities of employers and employees involved in construction projects and works. Mei Ting, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending these sessions. Just to recap, as you know, firms performing construction projects, supply works, and construction account works must seek BCA's approval and comply with these three COVID-safe restart criteria. So COVID-safe workforce is only one of the three COVID-safe restart criteria. So for today's presentations, just to let you know that this COVID-safe workforce actually has set out 7 key areas: the roles and responsibilities of the employers and employees involved in the construction projects, supply works, renovation works, construction account works. So firms are required to meet these 7 criteria as listed on the table to restart. So full details of the criteria, you actually can find it from the website as shown on this slide. So for this presentation, I will only cover these 4 key areas. First is on good health status of workers. Second is on ensure contactable and traceable workforce and workplace. And third will be the awareness on COVID-19. And lastly will be the responsibilities and care beyond working hours. So key area 1 and 2 will touch on systems to track health status of the workers, including swabbing tests and also surveillance. While key area 3 is mainly on the workers training and their responsibilities. And lastly, on key area 4 will be on employers' roles and in managing the workers' movement, including their off days. So on the first key area, good health status of workers, employers should ensure all employees undergo regular swab tests and fulfill swab test requirements. I will provide more details on this item in subsequent slides. And secondly, employers must ensure employees conduct regular temperature check twice daily and keep a record for minimum 28 days. So as an employee, they must not on quarantine order or stay home notice. So they must also be tested COVID negative at the MOH recognized facilities every 14 days in order to continue work. So they should also undergo daily temperature check and inform their supervisors immediately if they are unwell. So this is actually the requirement of the swabbing test for S-Pass and work permit holders, and you may find out more details from BCA website in the criteria. So overall, I will just give an overall idea what is this comprises. So all WPH and S-Pass holders who are working on construction sites are required to undergo swab tests and subjected to the regular swab test, except those working in the office premises and have no interaction with workers who are working on construction site. So for those who are working on renovation, facility management, lift and escalator, as well as maintenance and etc. So you may proceed to start work while waiting for the swab test arrangement. And subsequently, these workers will also are required to conduct the regular swab tests. So for Singapore citizens and also permanent residents, as well as the employment pass holders who are working on construction sites would need to undergo the swab test within the first 2 weeks of starting work. And these people also subject to regular swab tests. And those who are not working on construction site, including those from renovation, facility management, and as well as the lift and escalator maintenance, etc., they do not require to undergo swab tests. So on the second key area, ensure a contactable and traceable workforce and workplace, there are 4 important steps for that employers would need to take note of. So first, you need to update the employees' information on MOM website within the 7 days prior to your submission of your application for restart. And it's important actually for all employers should also ensure all the information in the MOM websites are valid and updated. So subsequently, employers should also update this info on MOM website regularly. So second would be submit all the required workers info in the application for restart. And third will be ensuring your workers to have a valid device to use to download the Trace Together and also SG Work Pass apps and to comply with the safe entry requirements. Lastly, would be the employer should also monitor the movement of employees when they're in and coming in and out of from the accommodation, and also keep a record for at least 28 days. So on key area 3, awareness of COVID-19. So it's actually very important for the employers to ensure workers have attended and passed the mandatory training. So employers could register your workers via the BCA Academy website. It's a very, the training course is actually is a very simple animated pictorial interactive information on how to prevent COVID virus and maintaining personal hygiene. So at the end of the training, there is a quiz for the workers to complete. So workers are required to complete the quiz, and that would consider as completed the training course. So employers should also assign a COVID-safe workers leaders on the ratio of every 20 workers that should have COVID-safe workers leaders. So whenever possible, employers should also provide educational materials and also conduct briefing to ensure your workers actually are aware of the good practices on personal hygiene and ways to prevent COVID virus. So to establish, to develop such materials, you may also refer to MOH or NEA website for reference. So this is the last key area that I will cover in this presentation, which is on responsibilities and care beyond working hours. So to reduce the potential of the virus spread in the workers' community and also avoid the workers who congregate at the hotspots area during their rest days. So actually workers should stay in their accommodation after work, including their rest days, to avoid social contact. And employers should also are required to stagger their rest days throughout the entire week. So on this, actually, employers may refer to MOM website for further updates. More details will be released at the in future. Thank you. I think that's all from my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mei Ting. Coming up, we have Ms. Vivian Fu, Deputy Director, Strategic Engineering Projects Department, to bring us through some key measures for COVID-safe worksite infused with tech-enabled audit and inspection. Vivian, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll bring you through for the COVID-safe worksite document. Just give me a minute, I'll load up the... Sorry, the first slide normally takes a while. Okay, we all come in with a common desired outcome, which is to ensure that with the restart, there wouldn't be a resurgence of infection for work sites. So the purpose of this slide is actually to say that during this very controlled restart period, we actually build in multiple layers of defense at work site. So the first layer, the first tier that you see is the most important tier, which is the builder himself. he is to put in place strict management measures at site, and also to always monitor the health status of his workers and to inform BCA through daily submissions should they fall ill. Then below the builder, he has a tier of like, it's similar to like the RERTO scheme where instead this will be the SMO and SDO layer. They are appointed by the builder to ensure that all these measures at site are in place, the SMM measures. So this forms the first few layers of defense. In addition, BCA is also requesting for applicants to submit their projects to BCA for our review for the restart of the 3 criteria. Before restart, the A&I team would also go down to do random audit inspection. So these are different layers of defense in order to minimize the resurgence when we restart at site. So I have put in quite a few slides for the worksite document, but I will only focus on the key areas that I wanted to highlight this afternoon. So the first thing would be the duties of the SMO. So after the builder has appointed the SMO, SDO, he has a series of duties that he has to carry out, like to conduct inspections and checks to ensure that compliance in place. So on this, we hope that the developers also play an active role together with the builders to ensure that this system of safe management measures is in place with his whole tier of SMOs and SDOs. So the SDO is meant to be assisting the SMO. So if you look at the next slide, right, we have actually put in the requirements on the numbers based on the number of workers. So it is the bigger the site, the larger the area that it would have to be covered, and hence we put in more numbers of SMO and SDOs to ensure that all these SMM measures are in place. So another very important thing that we want to highlight is the contact tracing. So as you all know that we are making the, it's a whole of government approach for safe entry. So everywhere you go, you will need to key in your NRIC or your details, or at all entry exit points. So for work sites, similarly. In addition to that, we also ask for all work sites to have to ensure that all personnel who enters have their Trace Together app as well. So this is very important for speedy contact tracing when needed. At the same time, we are requesting for daily reports to be submitted by the builder to ensure the health of the workers. So this is like a health status declaration to be, it's just a formality to be submitted because in the first place, they are supposed to be keeping that at site anyway. So one more additional step that we are requesting is for builders to submit to us for our records. So one thing that I wanted to mention here is I think quite a few have been asking on the cohorting. What we are putting in our guidelines is for workers working on the same project to be cohorted together within a dedicated accoms. Dedicated accoms could be on-site CTQ, which is a preferred option, and it could be off-site dedicated dormitories if there's not enough space for CTQs or large enough CTQs at site. So this is one of the key criteria in order to ensure that the workers are cohorted and to minimize mixing. So another criteria would be segregation at site. Builders are to segregate workers at work sites into different teams. So for workers that are working on different activities, they are supposed to be segregated into different zones. So I will explain more in the next slide on what we mean by segregation. So the segregation carries on from the accommodation all the way to work site. So when we're talking about accommodation, this is an example of how the teams can be segregated from the dorms first. So I will carry you through from the dorms, then to the shared facilities, then to the site. So if you're looking at this slide here, you can see that the workers who are working on zone 1 versus zone 3, zone 2, zone 4, they are all staying on different levels or different blocks. So if you see the dormitories here, they are segregated by their activity. similarly for their shared facilities, the canteens and the breaks, right? We are encouraging them to have staggered break times for shared facilities. If the site is big enough, they can even have their own dedicated facilities like toilets and canteens. So similarly from the accommodation itself, when they enter and exit the site, it's separated by barricades. So this is one good example where someone from team A goes into the site, he'll be using a separate entry point from someone who's entering from team B. So it can be something as simple as you're still using the same entrance, just that you have split it into two. So just now I was talking about accommodation, access point, entering to site. So now at site itself, right, if you're looking at the different teams, so you can see from here, right, for team A, they could be doing different activities like form work, force work, whereas for team C, they could be doing strutting works. So all these are separated by different zones. And they in our requirements, we are saying that for each zone, the workers are supposed to be at least 2 meters away from each other. So that will be one good example of how segregation at site can be carried out. Sorry, I just go back to the in order to reduce physical interaction at site, we have actually break down into the different personnel, different types of personnel. So you have like management, administrative staff who generally works at the work site. Then you also have site supervisors, RERTOs. You also have short-term workers. So we have split them by different types, and we have mentioned specifically some of the guidelines on how they can be segregated from each other in order to minimize mixing. So those that have to go down to the worksite themselves, generally they will be kept away from those that are in the site office. And as far as possible, we are encouraging all site supervisors to conduct their inspections virtually as far as possible. So these are for another area where for delivery, it's an example of like generally they would actually go to multiple sites within a day. So we have also put in our guidelines how they should actually ensure that the delivery logistic people do not mix with the main workers at site. And I think this is the last part of the, this is the last point on the, in terms of the worksite document. To ensure cleanliness of the premises, we have also put in some of the good guides on how to ensure disinfection and how the cleaning is carried out thoroughly at site, like highly commonly shared areas to be at least disinfected twice a day. So there's one more slide that I wanted to, oh yeah, on this is an important point. So we would request for all builders to have this in place. So this is very important. For suspected case and confirmed case, the builder should have their evacuation plan and follow-up plan ready, so that in the event where their workers fall ill, or if there's a confirmed case, they can activate the plan immediately, and there can be timely intervention. So this is my last slide, and this is actually on the audit and inspection part on how some of the tech tools can be used to support the industry in self-monitoring. So it's like instead of like having so many physical SMO, SDO checking each other, one way would be to use tech-enabled tools. So just now I've already mentioned on the safe entry, trace together. Then another one was the one that I said was to the temperature taking, MC tracking. So all these can be done via like a Form SG. So we have even done up a Form SG so that the builder can fill out very easily and can submit in every day. So this is a way of tracking as well. And to ensure like safe distancing measures are being carried out on site, we are encouraging developers and builders to install CCTVs, or to even use like the AI wearables, such that let's say if you see congregation of workers at site, you can detect, and then they can the SMO can actually carry out like improvement measures. So these are some of the digital tech-enabled tools that we would encourage builders and developers to use for monitoring purposes. I think that's my last slide. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Lastly, we'll have the third criteria to be covered by Mr. Eddie Wong, Senior Manager, Business Development Group, who will share with us on the desired outcomes and key requirements of COVID-safe accommodations and transportation criteria. Eddie, please.
Good afternoon, members of REDAS. Good afternoon, members of REDAS. I'm Eddie. I'll take you through on safe accom and safe transportation. So as everyone know, I think there are one too many COVID outbreaks at the construction work site. And this is very worrying for the health and the safety of our migrant workers. And I think for members of REDAS also who are developers, I think the last thing you want is to have an outbreak on your site and cause the project to come to a standstill. And this can range anything from weeks and even to months. So it is very important that we restart our construction projects to be COVID-free. And to achieve this, the contractors should follow closely to our safe accommodation and safe transportation criteria. This will enable them to prevent the resurgence of COVID-19 cases among the workers. And most importantly, by adhering to those criteria, they would be able to cohort the workers, bubble wrap them, and to prevent intermixing between workers working on different projects so that COVID-19 is not spread from project to project, and also ensure that the workers are being ferried from where they live to where they work in a safe and sustainable transport manner, and to minimize the risk of COVID-19 transmission to the public. So this is the 8 criteria for safe accom and safe transport. Basically, we have safe distancing measures, cohorting and segregation of workers, tighter control of entry and exit, hygiene and housekeeping, welfare and well-being of workers, remain vigilant to identify and isolate cases, and safe transportation measures. So A, D, E, and F follows very closely to MOM's baseline guidelines on social distancing, and B, C, and D are new criteria that your contractors should comply with. Example, cohorting and segregation of workers, appointment of safe management officers, safe distancing officers, COVID safe worker leaders, and safe transportation measures so that your project can restart in the COVID-free manner. So for safe accommodation, one of the key strategy is having dedicated accommodation for all your contractors' workers. This is applicable for S-Pass and work permit holders. So as we all know, our migrant friends, in the type of accommodation they typically stay in is the purpose-built dorm, ancillary factory-converted dorms, CTQ, TOLQ, and HDB PRP. And broadly, they can be classified into 3 types of works. For type A, project-specific construction workers. They are typically working on one project site. Type B, non-project specific construction workers. These are your specialist subcontractors who will probably work on multiple project sites. And type C, your construction account workers, they are not deployed at the work site at all. So for type A workers who work on specific construction sites, those that are living in a purpose-built dorm, in a factory converted dorm, your contractor should, as far as possible, cohort them floor by floor. And basically, workers working on the certain project should be grouped together and cohorted on a single floor. And workers working for another project, perhaps to be cohorted on another separate floor. This is to prevent the intermixing between the workers and to minimize, if any, the spread of any COVID outbreak. So for non-project specific construction workers, these are the workers working on multiple projects, or especially subcontractors. It's advised that they cannot share the same floor with workers who are actually dedicated to work on certain construction projects. And the contractor should cohort them, segregate them in different rooms. For example, if I'm a subcontractor for project, my workers are being subcontracted to work on project 1, 2, 3, I shouldn't be living with my fellow colleagues who are working on project 3, 4, and 5. I think we also have, in terms of project-specific construction workers, some of them also live in ancillary FCD. So as far as possible, that the workers under one employer should be cohorted in terms of project and in terms of floors. For Type B and Type C workers, this consists of workers under one employer. So again, contractors should segregate them into different rooms at project level. For CTQ and TOLQ, I think there's less of a problem because the entire workforce is really cohorted on site. And for workers, for S-Pass and work permit holders living in HDB and PRP, again, the principle applies. As far as possible, the employer should only ensure that the workers living in the HDB unit or the PRP unit should be working on a single project only. So moving on to safe transportation. So the safe transportation criteria is largely based on MOM's safe management measures for workers on employer-provided transportation. So the rule of thumb is the employer or the contractor should provide dedicated transportation to ferry the worker, S-Pass workers, work permit holders from where they live to the work site. And when we say dedicated transportation, this means private bus, vans, lorries, and personal vehicles. I think according to MOM, they are able to accept the worker to cycling and walking to work, provided that the work site is near to the place of residence. So for employer-provided vans and lorries for foreign workers, also there's a minimum clear floor space of about 0.5 square meters per passengers, which translates to a 25% reduction in the maximum passenger capacity. What this means is the lorry that used to be able to ferry 10 workers to work, now you can only at most put 7 of them in the lorry. So basically, just to reiterate, the safe criteria for safe transportation, contractors should provide dedicated transport to ferry the workers from where they live to where they work, and the workers shouldn't take public transport. This is to avoid any possibility of transmission of COVID-19 to the public. So moving on to my last slide, I think my colleague Vivian has covered quite a lot on this. So basically, contractors should appoint safe management officers, safe distancing officers, and COVID safe worker leaders to work with the foreign workers to comply with safe distancing measures as stated in the guidelines. And appointed safe management officer and safe distancing officer under the safe work site criteria can also double up as the SMO and SDO under the safe accom criteria. And there should be at least one COVID safe worker leader appointed per room if they're staying in the CBQ, TLQ, PBD, FCD, or per unit if they are staying in a HDB or PRP. So for the safe management officer, broadly, his key role is to coordinate and implement safe management measures, conduct regular inspections of accommodations, and review measures if there's constant non-compliance detected. For the safe distancing officer, his key role is to assist the SMO in conducting regular inspections. And also for the COVID safe worker leader, they should, I think his key role is to ensure his roommates conduct daily temperature exercises twice a day and gather on their health status, and also to feedback to the SDO if there's any other any non-compliances. So basically, this is my last slide. I will hand this over back to the MC.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Right now, we'll move on to the last session, which is the Q&A sessions. You may raise your hand. You may raise your questions by clicking on the raise hand button, or you may choose to post your questions via the Q&A button on the screen. Over to Edie Tai, please.
Okay. Can you see me? Okay. All right. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to invite the President of REDAS, Mr. Chan Yin Hong, to say a few words to address the audience. Yin Hong, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chia. I think you have not unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. This is a very timely webinar, and that from the number of questions being asked, I know that many of us are very, very anxious to find out more and to get their projects going. So I won't take up much time, but I will just keep a few quick pointers. I mean, we fully understand the anxiety of most developers and owners who want to start work as soon as possible. I think the contractor, the scary people are even more anxious, and that in view of the cash flow issues and also the escalating holding costs and the additional costs. So we agree in principle that the restart must be, safe and orderly, so as to ensure there's no relapse, like Li Xiang said earlier, which could set back the progress further. So we hope everybody can be patient to cooperate and work very closely so that we can have a smooth start and also can move on as fast as possible in phase 2 and 3. Hence, REDAS urge our members to work very closely with the contractors and the related parties to facilitate this restart. So we have to work very closely as a team to make sure that we can have a very smooth start, so that there's no obstacles along the way as we move forward. We understand that the BCA is working very closely with all the related government agencies, MOM, MOH, NEA, etc., to find workable and pragmatic solution. And I believe that Li Xiang will share with you, they'll come up with some good suggestion, a one-stop center to make sure that people can go to the particular entity and get the things moving. REDAS has, over the past few months, urged our members to be more sympathetic and see whether they can extend further reliefs. So where possible, we also urge our members to consider how to help the contractors in terms of payments, because during a CB period, we know that it's not possible to certify the project. There's no work done. So some of them may have issues. So we hope our members, REDAS member, to be more or less flexible on this aspect. Other areas to cooperate very closely, and we have to search for, help the contractor to search for accommodation, temporary accommodation. So I think most of the developers are working very closely with their contractors to find temporary accommodation so that they can fulfill the conditions set by the government side and can start the work as soon as possible. And of course, developers fraternity will have to work with everybody to have a good restart and also to build resilience in the industry and to have a more effective BCP plans moving forward, so that when similar things happen again, we do have the good preparation to make sure that we can move on much more smoother rather than to be caught in this kind of unsure situation. So I hope with that, with the number of questions being posted, I think Li Xiang and the team will have a lot of tasks with a lot of answers to provide. So I pass it back to you, Li Xiang. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nguyen Hong. Now you have posted 144 questions. We take them very seriously, and I write as fast as I can to try to put them into several baskets for our panelists to answer. Now, rest be assured that if there are any questions not answered, one is our organizer will compile them at the end of the webinar to reply them. The other way is, of course, we are always open for you to post more questions directly to us after the webinar. Now, let me just begin with one very hot question that pops up many times. This is about swab tests. Now, I've asked Grace, who is in charge of the manpower side of things, manpower strategic planning, who actually helmed the effort, especially in interface with MOM, in terms of the safe workforce. Now, before she answers the questions, I've asked her to give you an overview of the principles of how to determine when swab test is needed. Let me just speak out a few of the questions that you all raise quite commonly. Of course, many consultants, as well as project managers, developers rep, go to site often. Now, do they need to be swabbed? All right, this is one question that's asked very often. The other thing is somewhat related to another question on show flat is you have people who are really going in to do, well, not quite construction work, but maybe it's accessorizing or doing decoration, whether these people need to be swabbed. There are also questions about if swab test is ever needed, how to go about it, where do you do them, and how often are these, and what is the priority? So, and also, okay, the question about the cost of the swab test, I think earlier was covered, but I would not ask Raj to answer this first. I will leave him last to answer all the related costs and financial questions. So maybe over to you, Grace, first. Give an overview about the swab test approach, and then the specific questions up on many developers' mind. PMs, representatives, consultants, do they need to be swabbed? Okay, over to you, Grace.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Tai. Okay, so maybe I think some of the questions are also kind of addressed in the slides. So the slides will also be shared to the participants. But in principle, actually, for developers here, we want to just clarify that these swab test requirements mainly is for those people that is in the construction sector, marine sector, and also the processes sector. So because of the incidence rate that was relatively higher in these areas, that's why there is a bit more stringent requirement. For developer office, HQ office, and your workers that is in the office, working in the office and not going to construction site, it will not apply to you for the swab test requirements. So that means there's no regular swab test required. And your office, if you want to start your office work, actually you just go through the normal processes that goes to the MTI for application, and also just put in the number of personnel that needs to go to office. So this is the normal MTI route, because I understand that you are developers and not construction companies. Okay, then, but I also note that actually there are professionals that need to go to construction site. And for example, project managers that go more often to the construction site. To protect yourself and also your families, it is important that we have this regular testing regime. But one thing I would also want to highlight is that while we conduct this round of testing, swab testing, we are also working together with MOH to monitor the outcome of these test results. And if the test results shows satisfactory and is good, actually in future, there is also a review of the frequency and regime. Therefore, it is very important for us to continue to uphold the safe worksite and safe all these requirements, so that we will emerge better after this round of swabs. And other questions like where is the swabs being conducted? If they say the projects, there's projects being prioritized to move forward, or through other appeals route that comes in, we will also facilitate, if let's say the personnel is staying in the HDB in the community, or in the non-dorm areas, non-dormitories, like HDB and private properties, BCA will also facilitate this arrangement of the swab test. Basically, we are trying to prioritize these limited resources for a start, but over time, actually, MOH is also ramping up these testing provisions. Yeah. And I think, okay, in terms of where is the test being conducted, right? Actually, currently, there is 2 locations. One is at the floating platform. The other one is the Old Police Academy. Yeah, so this already started since 2nd June. We work quite closely with HPV to manage so that there's properly orderly manner by time slot. And we also urge the contractors when we send out the schedule to them to stick to the schedule, because actually the day that you're if you don't go or miss the sessions, right, actually is also wasted. Yes. So I think roughly these are the few areas. If there's other questions, I could also address separately.
Thanks, Grace. Essentially, we are not doing this swab test lightly. I think many of you, I think this question also came out in the TAC's discussion, is that traditionally before COVID-19, you will go to site very often, say developers or project managers. Now, we are saying that since now we are all working from home, is there a possibility to review how you do your work, that whether more of such discussion can be done online rather than going there physically? I think we're not saying that don't go. There will be time you need to go, but now we need to shift the kind of center, or rather the frequency of such meetings off to an online platform, so as to minimize the risk. Firstly is to breaking the bubble. Secondly is also for your own family. I think this is important. All right. Now, you may continue to post more questions, but I will just go on with the first 130 over questions first. Now, let me move on to the issue of dormitories. I've invited Chikit to join us, Group Director of PD. So he is overseeing the safe accommodation part of work. Now, there are questions about how do I go about getting approval to do my CTQ or TOLQ? Where do I go? I mean, there are a lot of questions about knowing that they have workers, but then they need to build this CTQ or build this temporary dorm. What is the process involved? How do I go about this? And there is a new initiative that we have streamlined now, and this is the juncture I invite Chike to share with the audience.
Okay, thanks for the invitation, Vitai. Okay, for the safe accommodation, right? I just want to stress the importance of having this safe accommodation. Firstly, because we want to reduce the intermixing of the workers from the different projects. So it's important that we house all the workers together. I suppose the perfect solution is the on-site quarters and the CTQ and the TLQs. I think that's where all the queries are coming from as a result of this. So we have actually set up a one-stop shop front to actually deal with all these CTQ and TLQ applications. Previously, agents, or rather the contractors, will have to go to different agencies to do this. So we have set up this one-stop shop front managed by BCA. So you can come to us for this. We will subsequently share the URL on this shop front with all of you. So from there, we will then go on to clear with the different agencies, consult the different agencies on whether that piece of site can actually house a CTQ or a TOLQ. So we will also go on to contact you on how to actually go about applying for the construction of the CTQ and TLQ if the agencies have no objections to, or basically support the housing of this on-site quarters. So that is the process itself. Yeah, if there's any queries, feel free to drop me an email.
Okay, I'd like you to also maybe share with the audience about what's happening now with the ITF clearance of dormitories. Would it be yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the process of the clearing of the technical clearances, right? You will actually go through this one-stop shop front. So we will actually do that. So we will contact all the multiple agencies. So we will, from once you have registered an interest and submit the necessary info, we will go ahead with the consultation with the different agencies.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I need to make myself clearer. Some of you may have already received updates about the clearance of dormitories. So actually what happens on the MOM front is that they are starting to release information about which are the dormitories that are cleared or being cleared at what stages of clearance. This is basically to reach the point where the dorm is declared clean and the workers are made available for work. So this information can be found on the MOM website. So your builders should be able to access this information for further planning as to how and these workers can be taken into the preparation for the restart. Chike, anything you want to add there?
Yes, this is a new initiative, and in fact, over the last 2 days, that was where the news was released that they are progressively, the news of those dormitories and that will be cleared in the upcoming weeks are now shared with the public, and the industry, I think, will welcome this move. So keep a lookout for the webpage itself, for the updates on the webpage on which dorms will be cleared in the coming weeks.
Okay, so as far as the building of new dormitories, the clearance part, BCA will provide the point of contact for the application, as what Chike has highlighted. The links and the portal of how to do this will be shared. I think in this case, we'll definitely go through REDAS as well as all the other TACs for information. All right. Okay. Let me next move to Ketran. Ketran is holding a very, very important work right now in terms of granting the approval for the restart of projects. So let me ask him to address something more straightforward first in terms of the SMOs. I know that the slides have maybe touch on it somewhat, but there are some number of questions that ask about how many SMO per site, and can SMO double up to do other things? Can they cover multiple sites? So maybe Ketran, let's start with this easier one first. Your mic is not on.
Yes. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned in our worksite guideline, the requirement for SMO is that you must have at least one, you have more than 50 workers. So for bigger project, for example, you have 200 or 300 workers, we would expect you to put more. And for the SDO, our requirement is 1 in 50. The next question is that whether this SMO or SDO, should they be considered as additional headcount? Actually, no. You can make use of your project engineers or project manager or WSH officer to double up and to play that role. That is allowed. Okay, and this is quite similar to the MOM 9th of May circular on workplaces. Okay. Lee Sang, do you want me to address some of the questions that is pertinent to worksite?
Yes, please go ahead. I was
Okay,
going
I
to
think,
ask, but you can go ahead. Yeah,
yeah, I think there were quite a number of questions relating to project. They are starting piling work, can they start? Or project they are going to apply, going to TOP, want to apply for TOP, can they start? Or after TOP, can they start? Of course, all these projects must come in to us for approval. To me, piling work is the easiest to get it approved because it's actually single activity. So for these projects, if you are ready, please send in your appeal. We will consider it favorably. And for those who are nearing the TOP stage, you can also apply. Okay, but TOP stage, it depends on the type of activity you are doing and the number of workers that you are going to deploy at the site. The more worker you have, the more you need to take care of their health status, for example, whether they have cleared their accommodation, and obviously at the site, the segregation. Okay, and for those who have obtained TOP, you have to come in on the other category. I will lump it that there's one application on renovation category. Inside, if you open up, I think there are three fields for you to tick. It's quite similar to essential repair. If you want to carry out emergency repair, you still need to get our approval. And this one will come under a more simpler applications, which is lumped together with renovation. Those types.
Ketron, there are quite a number of questions about tenancy work and commercial renovation, fitting out works.
Okay, I think today we just have a press release saying that suspended renovation work to residential property. So the keyword is suspended renovation to residential property. Those suspended work for non-residential are currently not allowed yet. There are, in fact, actually many queries pertaining to that. Okay, and similarly for those that are resident that they have got a key and want to start their renovation, at the moment is still not allowed. But very soon, I think we should be able to, once the suspended, we have cleared the suspended renovation work, I think we will be in a very good position to allow them to come in very soon.
Okay, what about A&A works?
Okay, A&A works, we have lumped A&A works. I'm referring to those A&A that require plan submissions, because if not, then they will lump under together as renovation. So A&A work you are referring to, again, landed properties. For landed properties, all of them can come up, including reconstruction or even new erections. Those works can all come in now.
Okay, so just also picking up this one, there's one specific example about hotel renovation that will be under commercial renovation.
Yeah, hotel is considered commercial renovation, you are right. So they have to hang on for a while, hang on for a while.
Okay, now I want to have someone from BCA Academy, I suppose either Jane or Ken, who can answer this question, which is about the the availability of training courses for the workers and for the SMOs. Can one of representative from BCA Academy help with this?
Maybe we'll invite Su Ming, whether you want to answer this.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Su Ming here.
Yeah. Maybe address the concern that some of them know that the booking of the class for SMO is quite long. That's one thing. The other concern is about the workers. Again, do they need to complete the course before they can start work, assuming that they clear other criteria?
So for the SMO first, they can be deployed to work on site as long as they have registered for training. And the training must be completed 4 weeks from the project approval date. So in order for them to be deployed on site, they must show proof that they have registered for training. So that's for the SMO course. And for workers training, similarly, they can already be deployed on site and they are given 4 weeks to complete the training for workers. Many of them have already been registered. Some of them are undergoing training. Some of them are waiting for their SMS to log in to take the training. And I understand from the SMS side that there are some of them who have delays in receiving their SMS to start training because some of the dormitories are quite remotely located, and therefore I think the telcos have some problems reaching them in the SMS. But nonetheless, they have 4 weeks to complete the workers training as well from the project, excuse me, project approval date. That's general.
Okay, there was one question about whether developers or consultants need to attend SMO course.
Only SMOs that are deployed on work sites by the builders are required to attend the SMO training for construction sector. So for developers who have SMOs for their own offices or workspaces, those comes under the MTI and MOM requirement, and there's no requirement for training for that SMOs. So the one that requires mandatory training is only for SMOs for construction work sites.
Okay, thank you. I hope this clarifies, because we also notice as a high registration number for SMOs, and I think everybody is anxious and kind of register maybe a greater number than what your job sites may need. But this is also something that we're trying to ramp up the number of trainers to help tackle some of the shortfall. But if possible, if those of people who don't really need to go through the SMO course after this clarification, maybe you can rethink about this. All right. At this juncture, I would like to ask Reg to again give a quick overview about some of the concerns raised about what developer need to pay. I think questions very targeted at swapping costs, also SMO costs, and for how long some of these support measures will go.
Well, if you look at the restart package, the SMO cost that we're targeting is actually for the contractors, not for developers, because those, it's required for the contractors to have them at site, not the developers. Okay. For swap costs, the government has decided to fund the testing costs in existing construction projects until August 2020. After August 2020, we'll work out a way how the cost will be shared. And of course, taking in consideration industry concerns. So the costs are covered until August 2020. Thereafter, the situation is evolving. We will look at it again.
Okay. So this is again something that we offer to tie over this period. we are very mindful that all these measures are likely to go on for a longer time. So definitely we will review again. In fact, this round of funding was actually reviewed earlier. So I think we definitely are looking at it now post-August. What do we have to support? And again, I think you might have heard many announcements that it's not sustainable for government to just fund these costs. So we need to work out a reasonable method. So this is something that we will again update further down the road. Okay, there are a few questions that are slightly asking for information. Firstly, there are questions about why there are conflicting information from Ministry of Manpower, as well as maybe M&D, maybe BCA. So who do they go to? So we have made it quite clear now to the TACs that anything in the construction sector, built environment sector, BCA will be the one point contact. So it's easier for all of you that you don't need to run everywhere. So that explains what Chikit has earlier explained in terms of the safe accommodation. So this is in terms of answering the question about where do you go to in terms of accommodation questions and application. So that's one thing. And so it will be the same for all the other issues that concern building and construction. BCA will be the one point contact. Now, there are also a lot of questions about phasing, about what sort of projects can come forward and restart. So just want to again assure everyone that this is something that we are also dealing with it with a lot of care and a lot of concern about the resources. So as you hear the briefing on the 3 criteria, all 3 has to be met, and some of these are controlled by things that are beyond what actually policy or human being can control, which is like the COVID spread pattern, for example, which is why the piece on COVID safe workforce is perhaps one of the most challenging piece to tackle, and therefore the allocation of swab test availability does come into a lot of consideration as to what project can start. So you probably also know that the priority has always gone to essential and critical projects and projects that have safety concerns if left idle for too long. So these are the group of projects that we've been working on with the builder as well as the developers to make sure that they don't pose any danger or make sure that our essential needs are maintained. Now, in the course of also during the SHN and circuit breaker, we have been in close contact with many job sites with CTQs. And initially, it was quite problematic to make sure that they observe safety measures. But after weeks of laboring with the builders and the occupants, I must say that many CTQs have actually reached a more steady and stable state. So these are the group of projects we are looking at studying it together with the developers and the builders to see whether the restart potential is there, because they have workers on site and they are clean. I think those will be the one that has a high chance. And you have also heard that we now want to restart quicker but steadily. So we are looking also to industry, to developers, to builders to come forward to work with us on meeting the 3 criteria. And this is something that we want to fast track if possible so that we don't have idle workers. Now, how do we do this? This is something that we're going to work very closely with the TACs. Yang Hong, maybe if I can indulge your involvement in this, is that perhaps one possibility is for REDAS to also reach out to your members to see how they can come forward with a proactive participation as to what are the projects that can restart. We offer this also to scale to come to us with possible packages that we think these are the projects or categories of projects that can restart. Now, chief on my mind is about risk mitigation, to look at, again, the 3 safety criteria. So maybe Yang Hong, you'd like to comment on this as well, see how we can do a more ground up, more of a self-help kind of approach.
Okay, Li Xiang, I fully support this approach. In fact, I think many of the developers are quite concerned that their project name is not in the approved list, phase 1 list, you see. So in fact, many of them are asking, can they apply earlier? So with this assurance from BCA, who is now operating the modest coordinating the whole effort, I think we'll certainly disseminate this to our members to make sure that they follow the procedure, apply quickly, and get it approved if possible. Yeah, so I think it's a win-win approach. You can clear your site faster. At the same time, my members also can come in earlier, and that hopefully, of course, bearing in mind they must take care of the safety approach. Yeah, so I think we'll urge our members to work closely together with the agencies and especially BCA to facilitate this. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think with that, we are having another webinar tomorrow with SCAL. We'll be conveying the same message, and SCAL has already been told to also come to us with possible ways of organizing this kind of self-help so that we can move forward faster instead of protracted restart. So I'd like to just also now just go around on my panelists to see what are some of the questions that we can still try to answer within the next few minutes. Maybe Grace,
yes,
you can start off first.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Actually, I noticed there are some questions about how, if let's say consultants or developers who go to the site, right? How do they actually be applied and to get arrangement of the for swabbing if let's say they are staying in the HDB and private properties and not dorms. Okay, so for this, right, when the contractor submit the project for restart, actually they should also include the site, whoever that go to that particular site information. That means the consultants and the developers, PMs, and professionals into the project, so that we could also make the arrangement as well. And I think about the subsequent regular swap, right? Once the first swap is started, actually we understand that HPB is also putting up online registration or application. Currently, it's not ready yet, so we will keep you updated when this online self-help portal is ready. So then, the subsequent swap can also be arranged by the employer, the contractor himself. But more information need to come on later on, maybe later of the month. And the other part is actually how do we? I think there's also one question on the how do we know about if let's say there's recovered workers. Actually, recovered workers, there's also a regime that they do not need to be tested. So I think in the written reply, actually, we will also provide more information. Yes, okay. And okay, that's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Grace. Now, I noticed my MC just alerted me that a few people with hands up for question. So I'd like to give them the opportunity to pose their questions. So MC, can I leave you to start with? Magdalene Chu?
Yeah. Hi, Magdalene Chu. Do you mind if you unmute yourself from your end? Thanks. Okay, maybe go on to the next person. It might be some error. So maybe go to Shu Ping.
Guo Shu Ping, yes.
Yeah, do you mind if you unmute yourself, Shu Ping? Okay, maybe it's an error as well. We go to the next person, So King Ming. Yeah. Mr. So, do you mind? Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm Kim Ming from LTA. So yes. To get the restart, the BCA to restart work is the most important thing right now. So my contractors has a dilemma. For a typical LTA project, MRT project, we need about 500 workers. So the contractor is thinking when they fill in the form to submit all the names, which is not possible to get them back, or to submit a small number so that at least some workers can come back first? Or should they just submit a whole long list, but demarcate, maybe the first 5% first, or so what should they do? So maybe can advise me.
Okay, Chairman, can I
Yes.
take these questions?
Yes, please do.
Okay, we would advise that you start slowly, start with a small workforce, okay, and then after you have more workers, you can just inform BCA to update the list of your workers that you are coming to site. So it's very important. No point applying for 500 workers when the workers are stuck in the dorm, and we will not approve the 500 workers anyway. So we will only approve those workers who are ready to work. No? That means those workers who are staying in TLQ or CTQ. So based on the submission on some of the LTA project, I saw this morning there was one project they submit 100 workers. 100 workers, 50 of them are staying in the FCD, the F belonging to the main con, and then 50 on the site TLQ. So that's the way to go, even though their workforce they need is 300 to 400. So start small and slowly you progress to bring in more and more workers into the worksite. But the most important thing is that after you have started, please make sure there's no outbreak at worksite. Because if there's only outbreak, we together with MOM and MOH has no choice but to stop the work. So this is very important, must take it seriously. That's why we put so much effort in highlighting the requirement of working in the team and working in a designated zone. I think the purpose is that we want all the team to act like a bubble, so that if there's an outbreak, it will only confine to the team members and do not spread it to other teams working at the site. That's the philosophy of a bubble within a bubble. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, we have Li Sheng.
Hi, Li Shen. Do you mind if you unmute yourself from your end?
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Li Sheng, yes.
Okay. My question is for the office admin works and does not need a BCA's approval, but there is a condition: such works do not deploy construction account, WP and S-Pass holders. But we do have quite a few S-Pass holders working in the admin office. So I wish to know whether our office can restart, or only those S-Pass holders, they cannot come to office, or what can we do?
Maybe I can take this question. Yeah. If let's say the work pass holder or the S pass holders, they are purely working in a HQ office space, they will not be required to do the swabbing test.
I mean, they can go to office as normal.
Yes, they can go to the office, and you do.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, just make sure they don't go to site. Otherwise, you break the bubble. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we have Lu Jing.
Hi, can you all hear me? I'm Hui Jing from Dong Eng Group. Yeah, may I ask Engineer Chiu, just now you mentioned that some of the projects like piling, for example, we have a project piling we only need less than 20 workers to start. We have our premises ready. You mentioned that we can go on appeal. May I know how do we appeal? Is it through an email or through a portal? Thank you.
Okay, you can submit through an email. I think BCA we have a BCA-COVID email for you all to send in the appeal. If not, you just send in to the ordinary inquiry mail. That can also be done. Yes, and from there we will follow up subsequently.
Okay, Ken, thank you so much, Engineer Chiu. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Chong Chi Hua. We'll just go on.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
I'm Cheong here. Yeah, I want to ask about the restart. For the BCA restart, if we are not invited to restart without the reference number, are we allowed to apply for the restart?
Chuan, maybe you want to answer that
Okay,
first?
you can come in through the appeal route. So appeal route, there is no guarantee that you approve, but we will consider them. You can submit if you think that you can meet the 3 criteria.
Yes, actually we have prepared everything, all the worksite, all the program, all the interfacing, and all our worker has even been, our worker are all staying in the factory converted FCD, and then they have also swab tested negative already.
Okay, so for this project, you can submit through the appeal route, no problem.
How to submit the appeal route?
You can send through our either BCA inquiry, you submit the documents and all those things.
I see.
What about for show flats that does not have a project reference number? It's considered a temporary building, but then can we still apply under construction account works, or must we apply under construction project restart works?
For show flats, it's considered temporary building. So you have to apply under construction account works. So it will be treated quite similarly to lift and escalator, facility management, essential services, those category of work. That means it's quite similar to renovation works.
Okay. So sorry. I just mentioned. I just want to double confirm. Just now, Engineer Grace had mentioned something, because in our office we also have a few S-Pass doing accounts clerk and QSs who do not go to the site. So they are allowed to come back to office to work.
Yes. Not going to the construction site. Totally is
HQ
office.
Yes, yeah,
developer HQ office. Developer HQ office.
Yeah, because unfortunately their S-Pass have the word construction. So we are reading by the rule of the game. I mean, they mention anything that has
you're right.
So
yes, correct.
They are allowed to come.
We can also, not to worry. We can also extract. There's also a FAQ that's covered in our written FAQ that you can refer to.
Yeah, just to clarify, the project corporate office is different from the project site office. So those who work in the project site office, they will be treated similarly as construction site workers or staff, and the requirement of swab test will apply. So let's be clear about this.
Yeah. Very clear. They are working at the head office who does not go to the site.
Okay, thank you. Due to time, I'm just going to let last 2 persons here with a hands up to finish the question. Jason Chong first, followed then later by David Wong. I'm sorry, Alfred, we really had to cut off at David. All right. Jason?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to ask a question. We have a project that is show flat in a commercial building. Are we allowed to go on the appeal route method to get it restart?
Is the commercial building completed or not?
The commercial building is an existing commercial building that is in operation already. It's completed, it's DOP. It's just taking part one of the unit in the commercial building.
Yeah, so this will be treated as renovation work to a commercial building, and that have to wait. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, David Wong. Do we have a question from David Wong?
Hi, I'm David from Feature Development. I would like to ask, my project just obtained TOP. Okay, at the moment we got some minor outstanding work, for example, partition work. Actually there's a group of Singaporeans workers that are able to do the works, but do we need to apply any resume works permit?
Okay, so there will be 2 parts to your question. I will address the first part. So that one, you still need to apply under the other process, not construction site related, under the construction accounts works. So application you still need, even though the people doing the works are Singaporean. Grace, can you address the question whether this Singaporean worker, do they need to go for swab test?
I think this is this considered a construction site? It is.
We got the confirmation from BCA. We are considered non-construction site.
Yeah, if it is non-construction site, right? Actually, there is no need for swab tests.
No need swab test. So, which means they can just come into my building to start the erection of the partition wall.
But that is a renovation. Is it a renovation work also?
Actually, it's very minor partition wall between the units. Under BCA, this is under insignificant works.
So if it's under insignificant work, right? That sort of work have to wait. Then that means the only choice that you have, you need to come in through the appeal route.
Appeal route.
Yes.
Okay. Can I raise another question? Okay. Because actually we also have the balance scaffold to be dismantling, which affected the driveway. So in these kind of circumstances, what kind of arrangement I can arrange to dismantle the scaffold?
So by right, you should also get an approval for us. I will consider that sort of work as essential work, just like just like emergency repair. You know? Because it's actually safety is quite crucial that this false work need to be removed. So you can apply under that category.
Oh, it's applied to the contractors of FM side?
Actually, it's actually straddled. I mean, sometimes FM, you can try the FM or you can try under essential services, because
so you have to apply to the specialist contractor, is it?
Yes, correct. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, David. Before we end, let me just Grace has given some comments earlier on. Maybe I just quickly ask, go around the panelists. Ketron, any final advice?
Okay. My advice to the industry outside is have more patience, because we are loaded with too many queries, and we may not be able to reply to them on time. So be patient, we will get back to them. Okay, that's my advice. Yeah.
Thank you. Reg? Is your mic is mute?
Okay. Nothing that, just maybe something in addition to what Engineer Chu said. Maybe one way so that we can get the response timely would be to work through the TACs, so that there can be some aggregation of the similar kind of questions.
Okay. Yeno?
Yeah, okay. I'm very happy that actually the government, your bosses, and also even the minister taking very close hands-on approach on this matter to make sure that everybody move at a good speed. So we hope that all parties, especially SCARE and our members and also other consultants and the related parties, work closely together to more or less move this on as fast as possible. It's not easy because the number are very, very big. So we have to more or less exercise a bit of patience, but also at the same time, hopefully BCA side can expedite your internal process to help us to move faster. That at least the contractors and the developer side will be can relieve some of the pressure on their shoulder. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. So just pick up on Yen Hong's point, we are continually monitoring our processes and try to bring improvement almost on a daily basis. So you can see the renovation approval has shot up tremendously by just simplifying certain steps. So we hope to do likewise for all the construction projects. But bear with us, because this is a very new thing for all of us, and lots of information are flowing in and out. So all your questions, we will group them and cluster them to answer them according to categories and maybe reference back also to some of our FAQs. And we're also looking to associations like REDAS for their strong support. Some of the, again, questions that you feel you needed a channel to air through, we can also receive them through the association as well. So last but not least, I just want to thank my panelists and thank all of you as audience to take time out to join us. Before we leave, I also want to let you know that the information flow is so important that we are organizing this webinar on a regular basis. So in a typical month, we'll kick off the month with this webinar series. So at least I can foresee that in July, we're going to do the same, August, maybe September. And then in between, we have very intensive dialogue with associations, be it the CIJC or the built environment related associations, or individual work group with associations. And at the third week of each month, we will also be updating all our circular, updating all our announcement for following phases. So rest be assured there's no shortage of channel for you to come to us, feedback to us through the links. And also, you know, some of us, you can also reach out to us directly. So I want to just encourage everybody to stay together, stay united, and be very vigilant that we don't allow COVID-19 to re-emerge again through our construction site. Can't guarantee it will be 100%, but we all try our best. Otherwise, the whole construction sector will struggle again. So that'll be the last thing I want to see. So thank you all, and I wish you all the best, and have a safe and inspired time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, webinar chairperson, panelists, and speakers for the valuable insights about the COVID-safe restart policies, considerations, and power processes. It has been a fruitful session. We've come to the end of the session. After exiting this webinar, you'll be directed to access the evaluation form for today's session. Once submitted, you'll be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Thank you to all participants, and you've made our webinar a success. Stay well, be safe. This is Kenway from BCA Academy, and thank you.